It was late when she left, but I could still feel her presence in the house, in the air, in the spaces she had filled for so many years. The house had always felt too large, too empty, and in that moment, it felt even more so. The silence stretched out, thick with everything that had been left unsaid. The sound of her footsteps had faded, but her shadow, her presence, lingered. It stayed in the corner of my room, just beyond my line of sight. Like an unwelcome guest who had overstayed their welcome. I had always known she was different. My stepmother. She had always been a woman of secrets, her smile too perfect, her kindness too practiced. I had learned to navigate around her, to read her silences, to understand what she wasn't saying. But that night, everything shifted. The lies we had lived with for years came crashing down, and the truth, however painful, was finally exposed. I wasn't surprised when she left. The truth had already torn everything apart. She had been planning it for weeks, I'm sure. Maybe even longer. The quiet tension between us had been building for years, and finally, it had reached its breaking point. The moment I confronted her, I saw the cracks in her perfect facade. The mask she had worn so effortlessly, and I knew then that there was no going back. Her shadow stayed in my room after she left. A cold reminder of everything she had taken with her when she walked out the door. I tried to ignore it, to push it out of my mind, but it wouldn't leave. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it, the way she had looked when she turned to walk away. Her back straight, her shoulders stiff. But there was something in her eyes that I couldn't forget. Something that felt like regret, or maybe fear. I couldn't decide. All I knew was that her departure had left a hole in the space she had once occupied. And it was a hole that I didn't know how to fill. The next few days were a blur. My father didn't say much about it. He never did. He was always so consumed by his work, his quiet world of routine, that I don't think he even noticed when she left. I don't think he saw how the absence of her presence changed everything. It wasn't just her absence that affected the house, though. It was the lingering feeling that everything we had built together had been a lie. The perfect dinners, the warm smiles. The way she had always called me, son, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. It was all a facade, a performance, and the curtain had finally come down. But the hardest part was that her shadow never left. It stayed with me, like a ghost, lingering in the corners of my room, filling the empty spaces she had left behind. The room felt colder without her, colder in a way I couldn't explain. It wasn't the absence of her body that bothered me. It was the emptiness that had been created by the lies we had lived with for so long. It was the silence after the storm, the quiet after the truth had been spoken. When everything you thought you knew had been shattered. I sat in my room for hours, staring at the wall. The darkness outside pressing against the windows. The shadow in the corner seemed to grow larger, stretching across the room, as if it were trying to claim everything. I could feel the weight of it, the weight of everything that had been buried under layers of smiles and carefully chosen words. It was suffocating. When I closed my eyes, I saw her face, her eyes filled with something I couldn't place. Something I didn't want to understand. I had always been able to read her, but that night, I had seen something I couldn't read. Something that scared me more than anything else. And even though she was gone, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still here. Still watching me, still hovering in the spaces between the walls. I knew I should have confronted my father. I should have asked him what had happened, why she had left, why everything had broken apart so suddenly. But I didn't. I couldn't. The truth had been too much to bear. and the idea of facing him with it felt like an insurmountable wall. What would I say? Dad, do you know that everything she built for us was a lie? That she never really loved you? That she left because she couldn't keep pretending anymore? The words tasted bitter in my mouth, and I knew that even if I said them, nothing would change. There was no way to undo what had been done. There was no way to fix what had been broken. My stepmother's shadow had taken up residence in my life, in the cracks and the quiet spaces. And there was nothing I could do to make it go away. So I let it stay, because that was all I could do. It wasn't her presence I feared, it was the emptiness she had left behind. The knowledge that everything we had was built on sand, on words that didn't mean anything. On love that was never really love. The shadow stayed in my room, and it stayed in my mind. A constant reminder of the truth that had been revealed too late. And so, I sat in the darkness, waiting for the storm to pass, but knowing it never would. The silence was too loud now, and I was left alone with it. With the shadow of the woman who had never really been my mother. And I wondered, as I sat there, how long it would be before I could finally stop hearing her in the silence. How long it would take before her shadow would fade from the corners of my room. And the corners of my heart. The rain had been falling steadily for hours, drumming against the windows like a warning I wasn't ready to face. It wasn't just the storm outside that made the house feel colder. The house had always felt warm when my stepmother was here. There was a rhythm to it. A quiet hum of routines that gave us a sense of normalcy. But now, after she left, everything felt off. The silence between us was thick, heavy, like it had been suffocating for years. And we had only just realized it. I couldn't bring myself to leave my room that night. The space felt different, though nothing had changed. I looked out the window at the rain, the droplets racing each other down the glass, and felt like I was trapped in a moment I couldn't escape. Her shadow stayed in my room long after she left, an ever-present thing that I couldn't ignore. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But it didn't matter how many times I told myself that she was gone, her absence hung in the air. Like a thick fog. It wasn't that she had left physically, no. She had left in every other way long before that night. She had always been a woman who seemed to wear control like a second skin. A woman who made sure everything appeared perfect, even when it wasn't. For years, I had accepted her carefully constructed version of reality. I called her Mom because I thought I was supposed to, because that was what families did. Didn't they? They were supposed to be perfect, no matter the cost. But the longer I lived in this house, the more I saw the cracks in the facade. The cracks in her smile. The way she could never quite look me in the eye when I asked questions. The things she never told me. That night, the night she left, I heard the door close behind her with a soft click. I didn't move from my spot by the window. I didn't go after her. Part of me wanted to call her back and ask her why she was leaving. But another part of me was relieved. Maybe, I thought, maybe this was the end of the lies. But even after the door closed, I could still feel her presence in the room. In the corners of my mind. In the shadow that stretched across the floor. Like it belonged there. I lay in bed for hours, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain. Letting the sound fill the empty spaces. My mind kept drifting to the past, our dinners, the forced smiles. The way she used to call me, son, like it was a title she could just give me. But I had never felt like her son. I never felt like I truly belonged in this family. I had been playing along for so long that I had convinced myself it was real. But I knew it wasn't. And now, with her gone, the truth had been exposed. I could feel the shadow of her presence, heavy against the walls of my room, pressing in. I could almost hear her voice, soft and soothing, asking me what was wrong, asking me to smile, to pretend, to play my part. But I couldn't anymore. I couldn't pretend that I hadn't seen the lies that were buried under the surface. The lies she had built her life on. I wanted to scream, to run away from it all, but I couldn't. I was trapped in my own mind, trapped in the space she had created, where everything was a performance, a careful illusion to protect us from the truth. And now that the truth was out, now that she was gone, I didn't know how to live with it. I didn't know how to live with the fact that I had spent years pretending, that I had played the part of a son I didn't feel like I was. And I didn't know how to live with the fact that she had been doing the same thing, pretending to be the mother I had never really had. The woman who called me son had never truly seen me. She had only seen the role I could fill. The perfect family that would make everything seem okay, even when it wasn't. As the hours dragged on, the storm outside began to settle, the rain slowing, the wind dying down. But inside, in the room that had once felt like a home, nothing had changed. The shadow of her presence lingered in the corners, reminding me of everything that had been broken, everything that had been hidden. I couldn't escape it. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I stayed awake, staring into the darkness, listening to the sounds of the house around me. The house that used to be full of warmth, of the illusion of family, now felt like a shell. Her shadow stayed with me, and I knew it would stay for a long time. Even when the house was empty, even when the truth had been revealed, her presence would linger in the spaces she had once filled. And that was the hardest part. Not that she was gone, but that I had never really known her. Not the way I thought I had. Not the way she had made me believe. She had taught me how to live in the shadows, to wear the mask of family even when I knew it wasn't real. And now, the mask was gone, but the shadow was still here. I didn't know how to move forward from that night. I didn't know how to live in a world where the truth had been laid bare, where the lies had been exposed, and the shadow of the past still clung to every corner of the house. But I knew one thing for sure, the moment she left, I had been left with more than just her absence. I had been left with the realization that the truth was never what we thought it was, and it would stay with me, just like her shadow, long after she was gone. The days after she left were an unbearable quiet. Like the world itself had pressed the pause button and refused to move forward. The house felt emptier than it ever had, as if the very air had turned stale in her absence. Her shadow was still there, in the corners of my room, in the spaces where she used to stand, her figure now more of an imprint, an echo of something that had once been alive. I couldn't escape it, no matter how hard I tried. My father didn't notice. Of course, he didn't. He was buried in his work, lost in the routine that had always kept him distracted, kept him from seeing the gaps between us, the distance that had grown over the years. He never noticed the way her absence twisted the atmosphere in the house. How everything now felt fragile, like it might shatter if we spoke too loudly or moved too quickly. I kept to myself, retreating to my room more and more. The room that had once felt like my safe space now felt too small, too suffocating. It was like the walls were closing in, pushing me to confront something I wasn't ready to face. Every time I lay in bed, trying to sleep, her shadow loomed just out of my sight, stretching across the floor in the dark. Her presence was no longer something I could feel with my senses, it was something I could feel with my soul. I could almost hear her voice sometimes, too soft to be real. Son, she would whisper, just before I drifted off. But it wasn't the comforting tone she used before, it was different, strained. Like the word had become hollow in her mouth. I hated that I missed her. Hated it. She had built a life of lies around us. Crafted a world where everything looked perfect from the outside, but underneath, nothing was real. She had taught me how to play a part. How to fit into a family that was never really a family at all. And yet, now that she was gone, I found myself clinging to the illusion. The comfort of that fake love, the affection she had given me. Even though it had always been a performance. It was all I had ever known, and now, without it, everything felt like it was falling apart. A week later, my father finally brought up her departure. We were having dinner, an awkward, quiet meal. The kind where we both knew the conversation was coming but neither of us wanted to start it. The tension hung heavy in the air, like it had been waiting for its moment to strike. I spoke to her this morning, my father said, his voice casual. As if he were commenting on the weather. She's doing well. She's staying with her sister for a while. I didn't respond at first, unsure of what to say. Part of me wanted to ask him about everything, about her leaving, about the lies. About the years we had spent pretending everything was fine, but I didn't. It didn't feel like the right moment, and honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answers. That's good, I said instead, trying to make my voice sound natural. My father didn't look up from his plate. She asked about you, he added, his voice still light. But there was something about it that didn't sit right with me. She said she hoped you were okay. I forced myself to take a bite of food, chewing slowly, trying to buy myself time to think. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to feel about that. Should I be angry with her? Should I resent her for leaving, for abandoning us in this broken house? Part of me wanted to, but another part of me, the part that was still holding on to the past, still longing for the family we never had, didn't want to let go. Did you tell her I'm fine? I asked, my voice almost too calm, too steady. I didn't want him to know how much it hurt to hear about her. How much I was still tangled in the web she had left behind. He looked up, finally meeting my eyes. I told her you were doing well. That you were handling things like usual. His words didn't comfort me. They didn't make me feel better. They just made the emptiness feel worse. I didn't know if I was handling things at all. I didn't know what I was doing. What was I supposed to do without her? Without the lie? I sat back in my chair, the uneaten food in front of me suddenly tasting bitter. As if I could taste the years of pretending in every bite. I think she's doing the right thing, my father added after a moment. His eyes going back to his plate. She needs some time to think. We all do. I didn't respond. What could I say? I wanted to scream that she had never thought of me or us when she walked out. I wanted to tell him the truth, that it wasn't just about her needing time. It was about the fact that she had never really been there to begin with. But I didn't. I stayed silent, staring at my plate, feeling the weight of everything that had been left unsaid between us. After dinner, I retreated back to my room. The weight of the conversation still hanging in the air. As I sat on my bed, the shadow of her presence still lingered in the corner of the room. Just out of view. It was like a wound I couldn't heal, a scar that wouldn't fade. She had been a part of this house, of my life, for so long. And now she was gone, but her shadow remained. It stayed with me, in the spaces I couldn't escape, in the corners of my mind. I wondered if it would always be this way, her absence, the weight of it. hanging over everything, like a dark cloud. Would it ever feel like she hadn't been here? Would it ever feel like the house was truly mine again? I didn't know. All I knew was that her shadow was still here. And no matter how much time passed, it would never leave. I could feel it, even as I lay down that night, the weight of it pressing down on me. A constant reminder that some things, some people, are never truly gone, even when they've left. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't sure if I ever wanted it to be. The house felt like a hollow shell without her, but that wasn't what haunted me. It was the presence that lingered after she left, the feeling that something had remained behind, something intangible that I couldn't touch but could never escape. Her absence didn't leave a space, it left a weight, pressing on the walls, the air, my chest. The shadow that hung over my room at night felt heavier than the rain outside. More persistent than the silence that had settled in. I spent the next few days in a haze, unsure of what I was supposed to do. The house felt empty without her. My father was still lost in his world of work, and I had no idea where to go from here. I thought I would feel relief when she left, but instead, there was only a quiet ache that sat deep in my gut. I should have been happy. I should have been free of the weight of her presence, of the quiet lies, but I wasn't. I was still drowning in the aftermath of everything she had been, and hadn't been. At night, I would lie in bed, my eyes fixed on the shadows that crept across the walls. The room had never felt so big or so small. A space caught between the person I was and the person I had yet to become. My mind kept going back to the way she had called me, son. That word that had always seemed to mean more than it ever truly did. The word had become a comfort, a mask we both wore, a lie that I had learned to accept. Even when I knew deep down it was never real. But that night, the night she left, I couldn't hear it anymore. The word son had lost its warmth. It had become just another hollow echo in the space she had left behind. Her shadow was there in the corner of the room, just past the window where the streetlights shone dimly through the rain. I couldn't escape it, no matter how hard I tried to close my eyes. It stayed with me, an imprint of what we had built and destroyed. The storm outside had stopped, but the storm inside me had only just begun. I was angry. Not just with her, but with myself. For not seeing it sooner. For letting her manipulate me into believing in a family that wasn't real. For pretending to be the son she wanted me to be. I couldn't pretend anymore. The next morning, I found myself walking through the house, lingering in the spaces she had filled. The kitchen was still, but there was an odd warmth to it now. As if the absence of her had made it more alive. I wasn't sure if I liked the emptiness or hated it. There was something freeing about it, but it also made the silence feel heavier than before. I wandered into the living room, where she had sat for hours, always calm, always composed. As if the world around her didn't matter. But now, it was just the old leather couch and the coffee table, untouched. It was a shell, too. I moved to the hallway, the picture frames still hanging on the walls. There were moments we had shared, moments captured in photographs that now seemed distant. Almost foreign. I stopped in front of one, a picture of me as a child. My face smiling and carefree, my arm around her, with my father in the background. It felt strange, seeing us like that. Seeing myself like that. I had been so naive, so eager to believe in something that wasn't real. I turned away, unable to look at it any longer. My heart pounded, but I wasn't sure why. Anger? Regret? Fear? Dad, I said, my voice sounding foreign in the stillness of the house. He was sitting at the kitchen table, flipping through the newspaper. He looked up at me, his usual smile in place. But it didn't reach his eyes. I think we need to talk, I said. The words felt heavy, like I was about to open a door I wasn't sure I was ready to walk through. He set the paper down slowly and nodded. The weight of my tone reaching him even if he didn't understand what it meant yet. What is it? He asked, his voice calm, but I could see the tension in the way he sat. The way his hands rested on the edge of the table. I hesitated. The truth I had been carrying for so long felt like it was right on the edge of spilling out, but I couldn't find the words. What could I say? How could I explain what I had learned about the woman who had been in our lives for so long? The woman who had made me feel like I belonged when I didn't. She left, I finally said. And I don't think I can just pretend anymore. About her. About us. The words felt like they were splitting me open, but I couldn't stop. She never really cared about us. About you. She lied to you, Dad. She lied to both of us. My father's face shifted. The calm he had always worn seemed to crack, just a little. But he didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me, like he was waiting for me to say more, to explain what I meant. I could feel the weight of the truth settling in, the heavy silence between us. He didn't ask for details. He didn't need to. He knew, somehow, that there was no going back from what I had just said. I don't know what to do with this, I said, my voice trembling. With all the things I never saw. He finally spoke, his voice soft. I don't know either, son. He hesitated. But maybe it's time to stop pretending. For both of us. His words hit me like a cold wave. I wasn't ready for that. But in that moment, I understood. I understood that I didn't have to keep carrying her shadow, her lies. I didn't have to keep pretending that everything was okay when it wasn't. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a little lighter. I didn't know what the future would look like, but I knew that, for once, I wasn't alone in the silence anymore. We were both in it together. And we could face it. We could finally face the truth. The house was still empty without her. But the shadow of her presence, her lies, had finally begun to fade. The days after I confronted my father felt like a slow unraveling. Each day passed in a haze of quiet conversations and moments where we both just existed. Unsure of what came next. The house felt like a museum of our past lives, frozen in time. With the echoes of everything we had once been still hanging in the air. Unanswered and unresolved. I stayed in my room most of the time. There were moments when I would hear my father moving through the house. His footsteps faint in the distance, but there was no more casual warmth between us. No more shared moments of comfort. Everything had been laid bare, and the walls between us had become even thicker. Even more impenetrable. The absence of my stepmother was something I could feel every time I entered a room she had once filled. The kitchen, where we used to sit and eat together, now seemed too large. Too empty. The living room, where we had watched movies on quiet nights, now felt sterile and cold, even though nothing had really changed. There was no longer the soft hum of her presence, the careful way she moved around the house. Like she was the glue that kept everything in place. But the most unsettling thing was the way the house seemed to reflect the brokenness of our family. The truth had come to light, and with it, everything that had once been held together by lies began to crumble. My father and I moved around each other. Still living in the same space but unsure of how to bridge the distance between us. He hadn't asked me for details about her departure. He hadn't wanted to know. I had told him what I knew, but I realized that his world was so carefully constructed around The idea of family that he didn't want the truth to destroy it. It wasn't just that he couldn't face it. It was that he wouldn't face it. The idea of losing her, of seeing her for what she had truly been, was too much. And I understood that, but understanding it didn't make it any easier. It was a rainy afternoon when my father finally came to me, his face weary. His eyes clouded with something I hadn't seen in him before, vulnerability. It had been a week since the confrontation, a week since my stepmother had left. And the silence between us had become unbearable. "I've been thinking," he said, standing in the doorway of my room. "About what you said, about everything. About her." I didn't look up at first, the words still lodged in my throat, but I nodded. Unsure of what he was going to say. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't know if I could stand hearing him justify her departure or tell me that I was wrong. That everything I'd said was just the anger talking. "I don't know what happened between the two of you," he continued slowly, his voice quiet, as if he were measuring each word before speaking it. "But I need to hear you out. If we're going to move forward, we can't just keep living in silence. Pretending like nothing's wrong." I still didn't look at him. His words echoed in my mind, "Move forward." How could we move forward when everything we had was built on lies? How could I pretend like nothing had changed when everything felt broken? "I don't know if we can move forward," I said, my voice tight with frustration. "Not after everything that's happened." He stepped closer to me, leaning against the doorframe, his shoulders slumping in a way that made him seem smaller than he had before. "I've never wanted to hurt you," he said softly, the words heavy with regret. "I never wanted to keep you in the dark. But I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was happening in this house, in our family. I didn't see it." I let out a bitter laugh, the sound of it almost foreign to me. "You didn't want to see it," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "You never wanted to see it because the truth would have torn everything apart. But it's too late for that now." His expression faltered, but he didn't look away. "I know," he whispered. "I know. I've spent my whole life building this perfect picture of what a family is supposed to be. And now I see that all along, it was a lie." The words hung in the air between us, heavier than anything I had said before. They weren't just an admission, they were a realization. A painful reckoning that we had both been living in the shadow of something false for too long. I finally looked up at him, and for the first time, I saw the cracks in his own facade. He wasn't the perfect father I had wanted him to be. He was just a man, struggling to hold on to something that had already slipped through his fingers. "I don't know how to fix this," he said, his voice trembling. "But I don't want to lose you, son." The words felt foreign coming from him. Son. It wasn't the word that made it hard to hear, it was the meaning behind it. The years of distance between us, the years of silence and unspoken truths, all flooding into the room at once. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him how much he had failed me, how much he had failed us both. But instead, I just stood there, my heart heavy with the weight of everything we had lost. "I don't know if I can forgive her," I said quietly, finally breaking the silence. "I don't know if I can forgive any of it." He nodded slowly, his eyes filled with understanding. But also with something else, something I couldn't quite place. "I don't know if I can forgive myself," he said softly. "But I'm here. We'll figure this out. Together." But I wasn't sure if we could. We were both too broken, too lost in the wake of everything that had happened. The shadow of my stepmother still loomed over us, a reminder of the lies we had lived with for so long. And as I looked at my father, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. We couldn't fix what had been broken. Not between him and me. Not between us and her. But maybe, just maybe, we could learn to live with it. And that, I realized, was the hardest part of all.